work in stress management and living in the moment. He can actually, he's done a lot of different seminars on empowering leaders and stuff. So, and without taking any more time, I'm just going to hand it up to His Holiness. Thank you very much for your time for us. I really appreciate your presence here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brijesh. A very good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here. Since I would also like to see, I may have to shift my position.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
If you want to
Can you all see me? Yes, okay. Nice to be with you again this morning. I was here about a year ago. I don't know how many of you were there for my lecture last year. It's a new group, right? Okay. So I'll be repeating a few of the things that I said last year. So in that sense, I guess it'll be new for everyone. The topic we have for today is resilience and values-based leadership, managing workplace stress. How many of you are well experienced in stress? I think we all are. That's one thing we could well do without, I think. We may have many desires in life. We want more money, we want more this and more that, but there's one thing we don't want, stress. I think there's one thing we've had enough of, and we say, well, how can we beat it? It's an important subject because every one of us is afflicted with stress. So am I. When I'm coming here in the morning and we see some other huge vehicle coming our way, and we miss the signal, and I'm supposed to be here at 11, yes, it's a factor, it's a stressor in life. So practically every day we are confronted with innumerable incidents which test our patience, test our tolerance, which agitate our mind. And the challenge is for us to remain cool and calm and stable in the midst of it. Yes. And the workplace is no different. It's going to bring us so many challenges. And there will be provocative situations, there will be challenging situations. So how are we going to respond to them with equanimity, sensitivity, and wisdom? So these are some questions we're going to explore. And we're going to be talking about what stress is really, then come to resilience, and then talk about values, and then see it from an organizational perspective. And later on in this talk, I will also be introducing some concepts from an ancient Indian text called the Bhagavad Gita. Have any of you heard of the Bhagavad Gita? It's an ancient book of wisdom, and it will give us certain very interesting concepts with which we can view practically every aspect of our life. Everything in the universe actually can be analyzed according to that. It's not moving. This is the... No? So this is one code. Reality is the leading cause of stress among those in touch with it. So if you're, the only way you can be out of touch is if you're not in touch, out of stress is if you're not in touch with reality. There's another holy book which says there are only two kinds of people who are really happy in life. One is a person who is completely spiritually realized. And the other is the one who's completely unaware of reality, who's living in his or her own world. So, but however, for those of us in between, we're in touch with reality. And being in touch with reality means that it's a cause of stress. That's the way the world is designed. Whether it's physical stress, medical, emotional, psychological, relationship-oriented stress, financial stress, workplace stress, any number of stresses in life that we all have to face. Let's talk a little bit about what is stress. We have an idea of what stress is because we experience it so often. But we could define stress as a very normal human experience. It's not abnormal to be stressed. The degree of stress and the quality of the stress is what is important to discuss. So it's a normal human experience that arises when dealing with demanding situations. Situations place demands upon us and we are forced to respond. So the body responds in a certain way, the mind has to respond. So stress is the response of the body and mind to demands placed on them. Sometimes the demands are placed in the body, like if you're running a marathon race. The demands are placed in the mind when you're dealing with some assignment and you're grappling with some figures, or you're trying to figure out something in your assignment. Stress is when you feel you're under pressure to do something and you think you will fail. Right? Every sportsman at the beginning of a race, there's always a fear, right? I might not win. So there's that stress that's built up because there's an expectation, there's a demand that you have to do well, but you might just fail. So there's that fear, there's the apprehension. Some statistics about stress in Australia. It's at an all-time high, especially among young people. This is one of the recent surveys done here in Australia. And it rose 44% last year in 2017. That's a pretty steep rise. And the major complaints in this relation are loss of sleep, depression, anxiety, strains in personal relationships, etc., etc. So it's a very widely prevalent phenomenon. No one is exempt, from children, babies, to elderly people. Everyone is afflicted with stress to a lesser or a greater degree. And too much of stress causes all of these things, or some of these things at least. There are two aspects of stress that we need to consider. One is the psychological aspect, and the other is the physical aspect. The psychological aspect of stress is the perception of pressure. We feel pressurized psychologically because we have to deliver, we have to achieve something, some result. And that pressure gets very difficult for us to bear. You see, it's all in the mind. Because what is stressful to one person may not be stressful to another person. What is stressful to one person and extremely draining may be actually rejuvenating and charging to another person. You know, we all have different natures. And there's some people who really like to get into a good fight. You ever met such people? They really want to have a go at it. They love it. They want to get into an argument. They like it. It feeds them. It nourishes them. They can't do without a fight today. You know, they need to get into that. Some people are just completely non-confrontational. They just avoid any sort of confrontation or hostility. And even the slightest bit of confrontation gets them stressed. So it's very subjective. It's a question of the mind, of how the mind perceives a situation. A given situation could be perceived completely in opposite ways by different people. But even then, the fact is that even a person who is not stressed in one situation would well be stressed in another kind of situation. So ultimately, it's a response of the mind. It perceives the pressure. Keep in mind, it's a question of perception. Reality and perception are two different things, but for the one who's perceiving it, perception is reality. So a person feels and experiences the stress, sometimes as a result of the psychological pressure, there is a demand, or there is a need for the body to act in a certain way. So the body has to respond to it. So that's the second aspect of stress. The body may respond physically by moving out of the way in the face of danger, or the muscles becoming tense and taut, or the body responds by speaking in a louder voice, by becoming aggressive, or even by running away, for example. So these two aspects of stress are actually interrelated naturally. And what are the signs of stress? Something that we are all familiar with: sleep disturbance, irritability, depression, tiredness, lack of motivation, eating disorders, taking shelter of intoxicants to get away from that stress, muscle tension. A lot of the ailments today deal with the musculoskeletal system. And there are companies actually that specialize in this, in advising people working in offices of how to avoid that. Because our sitting postures aren't proper, and we're hunched up all day long in front of a computer or on a desk, and that creates its own strain, a physical strain on the muscles. So people develop stiff necks, they develop shoulder pain, they develop backaches. So the aches and pains of the musculoskeletal system are becoming very common amongst office goers because the life is relatively sedentary, you don't exercise much. If someone is very conscious of health and does exercises and so on, that's one thing, but generally the lifestyle is such that mentally and physically the body is placed into these situations. So even when one is preoccupied and one strains the body in a certain way, there's muscle tension. Even if one is worried about something, involuntarily we tend to strain and bunch up our muscles. And there are so many other symptoms of stress. Now, interestingly, there are two types of stress: good stress and bad stress. Good stress is called eustress. Psychologists have coined this phrase. And bad stress is what we call in normal English distress. Now, usually, we only talk about stress in the negative context. We only talk about bad stress. When someone says, "Oh, I'm stressed," we understand that that person means it negatively. The person is very unhappy. There's a sense of discomfort or distress about that. But we hardly ever come across a person saying, "I'm stressed, that's great, that's wonderful." We don't meet many people saying that. But nevertheless, there is that aspect to it. There are some types of stress and some degrees of stress that are actually healthy, that are actually beneficial for us. And without that, we probably wouldn't be able to do anything. But what's the cause of worry is this bad stress. Let's talk about good stress to start with, eustress. And then later we come back to talking about distress. So, good stress is that which is beneficial, is motivating. It motivates us to work, to accomplish things, to do things. It is short-lived. It is infrequent. It doesn't happen too many times. It inspires one to action. It helps one to learn, to grow, and to get stronger. It's important that good stress should be in small doses. Too heavy a dose, and there's another result. Not the kind of results that are listed above. So good stress could be something like, for example, a promotion that may come up in your workplace, and it's a challenge, but you feel inspired, you feel encouraged that your office, your company, your boss, they have reposed some confidence in you and said, "Okay, you can do it now, we want you to take up this higher thing." You're aware that there's a challenge there because the new position in the company is going to make a lot of demands on you, but you're geared up for it and you want to do it. So you're happy about it. So it's motivating you to do something. Or maybe a salary increment, a raise, or maybe the birth of a child in a house. So it nourishes you emotionally, and then it enables you to work more, to do something, to look after the family better, and so on. So these are examples of good stress. Can you think of some examples of good stress in your life where you felt a certain kind of excitement, a certain kind of pressure, but of a good kind? It wasn't something that got you really worried and anxious. You're aware of the challenges. You know it's not going to be so easy either. But you're still overall satisfied. You want to go ahead. Can you think of any such examples?
I can think of today's thing. I think when I was trying to organize this, I was a little stressed out, but it was a good stress because I know, it's going to benefit all of us here at the bank. I think that's one of the things that I realized, that I was stressing about it, that how it's going to go right, whether we have technology fine and all those other things, everyone's here on time and things like that. But yes, I knew it's going to be beneficial, so I thought that was a good stress for me.
Okay, that's fine. Any other examples?
It's holiday.
Sorry?
It's a holiday. Going on a holiday.
Going on a holiday, yeah. The prospect of going on a holiday, it makes you a little excited, right? Finally, I'm going to the Gold Coast or wherever, or to Tasmania, I'm going to, getting away for a while from the bank. I'll go and relax and enjoy and do my favorite leisure activities. So it's required sometimes. Yes, good stress. But imagine if you were to go away to the Gold Coast and Tasmania every week for 4 days. You're not going to have a job waiting for you at the bank, right? And eventually then that will lead to bad stress because now you're without a job, you're without money, so now you've got a problem at hand. So therefore, good stress is only in small doses. It's something that's short-lived. You don't want to do it every single day, going to the Gold Coast, or perhaps you want to go and live in the Gold Coast on the beach, but then you have to worry about your finances. So it is infrequent, it comes in small doses, and by doing it you feel motivated, it's beneficial to you, it's recuperative, therapeutic, you like it. So that's good stress. Bad stress, on the other hand, causes anxiety, causes health problems, is often frequent, it's repeated, it's unwholesome. Unwholesome means that which is actually not beneficial, that which is not sublime, that which somehow or the other will cause some negativity in our life, physically, mentally, or in any other way. So bad stress is that which is, in short, unwholesome. Any examples of bad stress in your workplace that you could think of?
Maybe some unrealistic targets and things like that.
Unrealistic target, yeah? And is the target set for the whole year? And you're working hard and you know it's so difficult and you're not able to meet that. And the stress is building up because it's not just an infrequent thing, it's not just in small doses. It's not just a one-off thing, it's something you have to deal with for the whole year. And then you're not able to do it. And as the year end approaches, you're realizing that it's harder to achieve that target. So it's tough. So it creates some tension within, which is not pleasant. Good stress has some pleasant experience involved, but bad stress doesn't have pleasant experience. Anything else?
Bullying?
Sorry?
Sometimes it's bullying in workplaces.
Bullying at the workplace, indeed, yes. Someone bullies you at the workplace, it's not pleasant. and you have to see how to deal with it, and it's affecting you every day because you have to come 5 days a week to your work. And morning to evening, you're here and you have to face that. So it causes bad stress. It's one of the stressors. Any other examples you can think of?
There's like objections from other departments.
Sorry?
Kind of objections from other departments. Like you're having to deal with people kind of objecting to things and changing their views and things as well.
Okay, people objecting from other departments, putting stumbling blocks into your work, bureaucracy and obstacles. You want to do something, but someone throws a spanner in the works, and they come and say something, you know, they come up with some rule and they say you're not supposed to do this, and you have such a good plan and you're all geared up for it, and someone comes and spoils your plan, and someone interferes. Perhaps there's some politics. You know, wherever there are human beings, there will be some politics. Yeah. So that's reality, isn't it? So yes, so these are some examples of bad stress. And even in your personal life, I'm sure you've all had experience of stressful situations. You know, you have a quarrel or disagreement with someone, some strain in a relationship with someone, maybe the sickness or the passing away of a loved one. So many types of bad stresses occur in our life.
Wife as well.
Sorry?
Wife.
Why?
No, I should another one. You are in
She's not
trouble.
here, I can say. Oh,
Okay.
it's recorded.
So let's go back and talk about the bad stress again. So we talked about the good stress, we talked about bad stress in general, distress. Now, psychologists talk about two types of stress, acute stress and chronic stress, and I've added a third one, which I call self-inflicted stress, some of which can be acute and some of it can be chronic. Yes? So, acute stress, as the word indicates, is very intense. It's short-lived. Oops, sorry. Did I do something?
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay. So, it's intense. It comes as a surprise, a quick surprise sometimes. It may not be pleasant. It may not give rise to a happy experience. It just comes all of a sudden, and you are forced to respond to it immediately. Let's give a very simple example. You're walking in the street, and there's a car that's coming the other side, probably being driven by someone who's intoxicated. He loses control of the car and comes onto the pavement. Of course, I hope it never happens, but just a hypothetical example. And the car skids and veers around right towards you, and you see it coming towards you, and in an instant you have to react. Your mind is all stressed now, and you're thinking, oh, what's happening here? And you quickly react and you jump. Yes? So your body has got stressed, your mind has got stressed, and you have responded. Generally, stress is what gives rise to what is called the fight or flight response. Familiar with this term? Fight or flight. When you're confronted with a challenging situation, you can respond in two ways. Either fight it actively or passively. There are ways to fight passively as well, you know. Gandhi, for example, had his non-violent movement. Martin Luther King in America had a non-violent movement against slavery in America. So you can offer resistance, you can fight either actively or passively, but even in that passive fight, there is an action because you are being proactive, so to speak. So yes, you're acting there in response. You could also react physically, like you have to jump. Now it's something that has come into your life immediately. So it's short-lived, your body is responding, but it goes away after some time, and you start coping. And you just fret for a while, my God, that was something. And you may talk to a few friends about it, and then after day or two, you forget about it, move on. And so it's short-lived. So it's something that forced itself upon you. It was not pleasant. Fight and flight. So here you decided on the flight option. You didn't want to confront the car and be Superman and stop the car. You said, I have to jump. So you jumped. So in other ways too, in our situation, sometimes you have a very confrontational colleague, let's say a bully, since you referred to that example. How do you respond? If it's a regular thing that's happening, it's another thing. But suppose it happened just once. Someone spoke, let's say, in an unacceptable way. It just happened out of the blue. You're standing in line at the airport or something like that. How did you respond? So immediately your mind gets perturbed and you respond in a certain way. So that's acute stress, but then you get over it. The body, the mind, they deal with it. They're able to overcome that. So acute stress is actually not such a big problem. It just comes once in a blue moon. These small incidents, sometimes maybe a big incident. If it's a very big incident, that may leave a lasting effect. But otherwise, acute stresses are usually short-lived. The problem arises in chronic stress. The difference between chronic stress and acute stress is that in chronic stress, it happens repeatedly. It happens over a period of time. Sometimes it can go on not just for weeks and months and years, but for decades, maybe a whole lifetime. Let's say someone's struggling with cancer, or someone's struggling with some family issue. There could be so many such problems that may come up. So these are chronic stressors, and that they are the cause of worry. It's like an onslaught on the body and the mind. The body can only cope so much. And an acute stress, because even though it's intense, it's so short-lived, so you can overcome it and move on. But because the chronic stress comes again and again and again, and you have to face it practically every day, sometimes all through the day, then it is very painful. It's very hard to tolerate. So this is the kind of stress that we are usually worried about, the chronic stress. So when we say I'm really stressed out, we're usually referring to chronic stress, although there could be other forms also of acute stress. Now, what do I mean by self-inflicted stress? Self-inflicted stress is, let's say, you didn't plan your activity well, you didn't plan the program well, and therefore there was last-minute stress for you. Yes? You're supposed to give a presentation like I was supposed to give now. And I'm already suffering from lecture fatigue. Being there for weeks together, lecture, program, presentation. So now there's fatigue building in, yes, to the mind, to the body. So we're a little bit on the last minute stage. So there's a bit of stress coming up in the car, in the traffic, and you're getting a little late. So that's an example of self-inflicted stress. A little planning, good planning, good management can ease that. So when we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. Yes? So this is an example of self-inflicted stress. We didn't manage our time properly, let us say. So because of poor time management, because of poor setting of priorities, we were not able to do things properly, either in time, or we weren't able to do the right thing or do it in the right way. So these are stresses that we inflict on ourselves due to our inability or unwillingness to plan properly, to manage properly, to use our resources properly, and perhaps out of bad habit. If I'm habituated to waking up late, then it's going to be difficult for me to do something where I'm required to rise early every day. It will take a while to get accustomed to it. So there's stress. So self-inflicted stress, say by some kind of an addiction. I'm addicted to alcohol or to drugs. Now this is self-inflicted, whereas generally I would say acute and chronic stress are those that are inflicted by others upon us, by situations, by circumstances, by other people. So the stressor is more or less not in our control, at least substantially not in our control. But in self-inflicted stress, we do have a lot of capacity, a lot of power to change things. So here are these examples of good stress and bad stress. Okay, and here's a nice interesting graph. How many of you have seen this kind of a graph before? Yes. So on the y-axis you have performance, and on the x-axis you have stress. So with very low stress, your performance also isn't that great. Generally, there's some performance, of course, but you're not really motivated to work hard and to put your heart into it. You're not excited about it. So your output, your performance is also relatively low. But as the stress increases, healthy stress, stress that demands the best out of you, stress that makes you rise up to the challenge and gives you the satisfaction of doing what you really like to do, what you want to do, then you perform well and reach a peak, which we could call the optimal performance. And that happens at a certain level of stress. And that's called your stress threshold. Every one of us has a certain stress threshold. Subjectively, it's all different because we're all different people psychologically, physically. So what's a stress threshold for me could be different from one that's valid for you. So let's say I could have a very low stress threshold. Maybe you have a very high stress threshold. So meaning that you can take on a lot of stress and still have good output. Your performance could be good even at higher levels of stress. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe even at low levels of stress, I'm not able to perform. I get disturbed. So there's a certain range of stress where you have good stress. So the upward range, it's generally good stress up to a point. But after that, when it starts deteriorating and your stress increases beyond a point, then your performance starts declining. And then you come to a point where you start really getting agitated and disturbed. You're still doing it, you're still able to manage things, your output has gone down, but you're still there. But once you come to the lowest point and the stress has become so high, you just give up. Maybe in some cases, extreme cases, there may be a breakdown of some sort, a physical breakdown, a psychological breakdown, emotional breakdown, or something like that. So definitely we don't want to go there. At the same time, we want to be performing well in every aspect of our life, not just professional, but also personal, social, in every way. We want to be productive human beings. We want to be useful. We want to have the satisfaction of doing something good. So therefore, a certain degree of stress is essential. So when we talk of stress, we should know that yes, it's not all stress that we are talking about. There's something there which is also helpful for us. Here's another interesting angle. Good stress can turn into bad stress. When there is too much good stress, so there is something called too much of a good thing. Let's say you're having a good meal. Now you've been invited to a good meal, so you're feeling very happy. It's giving you some sense of excitement. Okay, I actually been not eating well, and I'm looking forward to a good meal, and you go there, and if you eat in moderation, then you're fine. You feel happy after that, contented. But if you overeat, and then you're going to have some bad stress later on. You're going to have a tummy upset, and you're going to have other issues. Yes? So it's too much of good stress that also can lead or transform into bad stress.